Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. We are reading Swami Trigunatita Nanda, and if you've got the book, page 10. Remember, he's just been complaining to the master, not really complaining, that his parents want him to marry. And M had been telling him no. And the master said, "Why should you marry just now?" Sarda was his pre-monastic name, is now in a very good state of mind. Formerly, he had a hesitant look. Now his face beams with joy. It was several months later, when the matter became more pressing, that Ramakrishna, according to Swami Sardananda, who years afterward would tell of it, advised Sarda to run away from home, lest his marriage indeed take place. Take the money, steal it from your father if need be, and run away. The master urged him. Accordingly, Sarda borrowed 5 rupees from Swami Shivananda, which he would later repay, and ran, going first to Sri Ramakrishna to make his salutations. His ultimate destination was Puri. The first indication Sarda's parents had of his flight was when his father, entering his son's room, saw that those of his books that were borrowed from friends, and usually scattered about on his table, were neatly arranged in rows with their owners' names beside each row. This sight was shock enough. But then the father's eyes fell upon a letter that Sarda had left in the center of his table. "My dear parents, I hate to hurt your feelings, but I cannot marry, and I am leaving home." His father let out a loud cry and collapsed on a couch. Sarda's mother and the rest of the family rushed in. The mother seems to have been the only one to have kept her wits. "This is not the time to weep," she said. "Go at once, find him, and bring him home. Tell him we will not give him in marriage." So the father, the elder brother, Binoy, who tells the story, and a brother-in-law set out for Dakshineshwar. There they were directed to Kasipur, where Sri Ramakrishna was then staying. The date was January 3rd, 1886. Learning that Sarda had set off for Puri, they returned home and reported the matter to the mother, whereupon the whole family, including the bewildered but emphatic little ones, wept loudly. Binoy had an important position in Calcutta Steamship Company and was therefore able to conduct personally a search of all the steamers that one might take. Sarda was not so easily found. The next day, Binoy confided in a close friend, Upendranath Majumdar, who promptly sent a detailed description of Sarda to his brother-in-law, who was the Munsif at Puri, and who promised to keep a sharp lookout for the fugitive. Meanwhile, Sarda was moving in a southerly direction. He had no idea where Puri was, or that it was several hundred miles distant. When he asked the way, as though asking the way to a nearby village, people laughed at him. But he walked, begged, and starved, worn and footsore. He avoided the public roads lest he be found, and thus traveled much of the way through dense forests infested with wild animals, tigers and the like. There were no villages or huts where he might ask for shelter and food. The first day, when it became dark, he climbed a tree and sat in the crook of a branch for safety. The story goes that soon in the darkness, he heard a voice saying, "Come down, Sadhu. I have sweets for you. Come down, Sadhu." He was sitting in the dark, in a tree. How could anyone know where he was? After a while, he came down, and there he found some sweets and a pot of water. Of course, he ate and drank. He called for the man, but there was no response. So again he climbed the tree and there spent the night. In the morning, he searched far and wide for a human habitation, but found not the slightest sign of one. This incident impressed him deeply. He felt that God was watching over him and was convinced that he had chosen the right path in running away from home, avoiding marriage. Troubled over what he knew would be his parents' anxiety, Sarda guilelessly posted 2 reassuring letters to them from 2 towns. The postmarks, of course, immediately informed them that he was traveling by foot and on which road. Word was sent to the Munsif, who at once knew how to find the boy. With a little cunning, he identified him when he entered Puri, and on January 24th, Sarda's lonely and difficult journey had taken 3 weeks, sent word to the parents. Sarda is here, come and take him home. At once, they and some relatives undertook the then arduous 4-day journey by boat and bullock cart to Puri, where they arrived on January 31st. The party was given shelter at the home of the Munsif, who advised Sarda's parents to waylay him on his daily visit to the temple at Jagannath. Accordingly, they waited in a cart by the side of the road, and when their son passed by, sprang out and grabbed him, one on each side. The combination of shock and emotion left Sarda speechless, literally. For more than 15 minutes, he could not utter a word. Later, tears shed on all sides. Everyone rejoiced, and they all stayed at the hospitable Munsif's house for about a week, visiting the temples of Puri. Sarda willingly returned to Calcutta and promised that he would not run away again. And he kept his promise, says his elder brother, for about 4 months. Returning to Calcutta on February 12, 1886, Sarda, who had missed almost 6 weeks of study, had no time to prepare for his first arts examination, the equivalent of today's graduation from junior college. But he was permitted to take it, and to the jubilation of his friends, he passed. His family then tried to make him study for a Bachelor of Arts at the University of Calcutta. But this was not easily done, for as his elder brother writes, it became Sarda's habit to absent himself from home for days together almost every month, and so throw us into deep anxiety. After great trouble, we would find him and persuade him to come back home. What to do? Binoy, unable to bear the grief of his parents, which they hid from Sarda, decided to have an elaborate 6-week sacrifice performed by 12 Vedic Brahmins. It was a powerful and dangerous ritual designed to keep Sarda at home. During its course, one of the Brahmin priests bungled the recitation of a mantra and instantly went out of his head permanently. Binoy was obliged to give the stricken priest's family a few acres of land for its subsequent support. Thus, all in all, the long and exacting ritual was extremely expensive. At its completion, the 11 remaining priests predicted that Sarda would come home within 3 days, but would not stay long. When Binoy inquired why this should be, the priest said, "The voice of Sarda is always sounding at the feet of the Lord. Day and night he prays to him with heart and soul. We have called on him for only a month and a half. Consequently, our voices cannot prevail over his." As predicted, Sarda returned in 3 days and left again. Binoy tried other means of luring him home, spending a great deal of more money in the attempt. And there's a footnote on that. In Holy Mother Sarda Devi, it is written on page 121, Swami Gambhirananda writes, "The mother did not certainly initiate Sarda on that day, for she herself declared Swami Yogananda to be her first disciple. and his initiation took place at Vrindavan years after this. But Sarada's youngest brother, Sri Ashutosh Mitra, maintains that mother initiated Sarada. Perhaps the mother gave him a mantra, perhaps mother gave him as well a mantra after she had done so to Yogananda. It is not probable, however, that Sarada was at Vrindavan at this time. Let us for now say that the matter is a mystery. It is certain, however, that Sri Ramakrishna sent Sarada to Holy Mother. For Swami Gambhirananda writes, at the time of sending young Sarada to the mother for initiation, he quoted a Bengali couplet to put faith in him. Infinite is the Maya of Radha, which defies definition. 1,000,000 Krishnas and 1,000,000 Ramas have birth and live and die. Okay. No method that Binoy tried was of any use. The combined forces of Sri Ramakrishna's grace and Sarada's longing were invincible. It is interesting to note that the same Binoy Christo Mitra, who moved heaven and earth to prevent his younger brother from becoming a monk, was later writing with bursting pride of Sarada's renunciation, determination, and saintliness. Sri Ramakrishna had moved from Shampakur to the garden house at Kasipur on December 11th in 1885. There his young monastic disciples took turns caring for him. And it is small wonder that Sarada left home as often as he could in order to take part with the other young men disciples in this conjoined service of and closeness to the Master. Sarada Prasanna was with Sri Ramakrishna for only a little more than a year and a half. Nevertheless, reads a biography, he was a true disciple of the Master. That is to say, he received instruction and training from him, and by the time Sri Ramakrishna passed away, he was firmly established in his own spiritual life. True, Sri Ramakrishna sent him to Sri Sarada Devi, or as she is respectfully called, the Holy Mother, to receive initiation. But this does not take away from the fact that he was also a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, who trained him and in every way watched over him and planted his feet firmly on the path to God. There is a story that illustrates the training Sarada received from the Master. As we have said, Sarada's parents were wealthy and aristocratic. Naturally, they employed a great many servants who, as was the case in those days, did all the work. Anyone brought up in such a family felt it demeaning to lift a finger. One day, in the presence of many others, Sri Ramakrishna told Sarada to get a pot of water and to wash the Master's feet, a most menial of menial services. Sarada hesitated. His face became flushed. Then the Master said very firmly, "Go, get water." He went and got the water. It is said, just that one simple thing forever wiped off any sense of social superiority or egotism from Sarada's mind. The Master also trained him in meditation, and it is said that during his meditation one day, he suddenly found that the last trace of sex consciousness was evaporating from his heart. Thus he became fit for high spiritual experience. But unfortunately, no records are available to tell us when Sarada had his first experience of God. Now that's the very early days, early years. Now we're going into chapter 2. As a young sannyasin. Sri Ramakrishna passed away in August of 1886. After their first sharp grief had passed, the young monastic disciples found comfort in one another's company, and particularly in the company of Narendranath, whom the master had made their leader. He had done so because Narendra, who would later be Swami Vivekananda, was by virtue of his powerful personality, his brilliance, and his spiritual eminence, the natural leader of them all. Unquestioningly, lovingly, they, in turn, looked to him for spiritual guidance and were nourished and warmed by the love he bore them. At first, some of the young monastic disciples who had been caring for Sri Ramakrishna at the Kasipur garden house during his last months returned unwillingly to their homes. Others had no homes to return to, and the rent having expired at the garden house, the master's disciple Surendranath Mitra offered to rent another house for them as a sort of monastery and shrine to Sri Ramakrishna. A house was found in Baranagar, near the Kasipur burning ghat where the master's body had been created. It was a dreary, deserted place, sadly in need of repair, very old, and with the reputation of being haunted. It had 2 stories. The lower one, the resort of snakes and lizards. The gateway had long since tumbled down. The veranda which ran along the front of the upper story showed signs of decay. The main room where the monks were to live was in a most dilapidated state. Indeed, nobody else would have lived there. To the east of the house was another room which had been used as a shrine. To the west was a jungle-like garden overgrown with weeds and shrubs. At the back was a pond covered with green scum, which was a breeding place for mosquitoes. There was something weird about the place. Weird indeed. The place was haunted, not just by reputation, but actually. Later, the young swamis who lived there related that sometimes they would see the ghost entering the room where they kept their coal, and at night they would hear it going up and down the stairs. They did not mind, nor did the ghost interfere with them. They got along well. It was not likely, however, as we shall see, that Sarda encountered that ghost, at least not head-on. Such a house, desolate and spooky in the extreme, where no one but God-intoxicated boys would dream of living, became transformed into a place of heavenly joy by the intense spiritual practices of the young monks, who day and night, caring neither for food nor proper clothing nor adequate shelter, sang, meditated, and worshipped, studied, and talked of their master and of God. This was the first monastery of the Ramakrishna order, the Baranagar Math. At first, only 4 or 5 of the young monks were permanent residents, but gradually others left their parental homes for good and made this old and crumbling, but now vibrant house their only shelter. In December of 1886, an event took place that cemented the bond between the boys and intensified the spirit of renunciation in each of them. Sarda took part in this history-making event, which occurred not on the surface level alone, but on a deep spiritual plane, where the foundation of the Ramakrishna order were being laid. Let us quote from the history of Ramakrishna Math and mission by Swami Gambhirananda. There came to Baburam, later Premananda, an invitation for his mother to visit his village home at Antpur, in the Hooghly district, about 38 kilometers from Calcutta. The lady, a staunch devotee of the master, wanted her son to come there with Narendra. But as the news spread, the party swelled till at last one morning at the end of December, Narendra, Baburam, Sharat, Shashi, Tarak, Kali, Niranjan, Gangadhar, and Sarada. Now, I know all of you remember this very well. Narendra, Swami Vivekananda, Babaram, Swami Premananda, Sharat, Swami Sardananda, Shashi, Swami Ramakrishnananda, Tarak, Swami Shivananda, Kali, Swami Abhedananda, Niranjan, Swami Niranjanananda, Gangadhar, Swami Akandananda, and Sarda, Swami Trigunatita, started for the village from the house of Balaram Bose in Calcutta. They had with them musical instruments, to the accompaniment of which they sang religious songs on the train under Narendra's leadership. Thus, the few hours of train journey passed in joy. They reached Anpur and settled down to a life of intense spiritual occupation during their visit. To inspire them, there was the robust enthusiasm of Narendra, who exhorted them not to waste their time, but to utilize it for devotional music, study, meditation, prayer, discussion, and dissertation. To create a suitable atmosphere, there was the whole family of Babaram, firmly devoted to Sri Ramakrishna. They talked of the Master, and thoughts of him were uppermost in their minds. The whole place became surcharged with the spirit of renunciation. Naturally, the bond of brotherhood was forged here indissolubly. All this took tangible shape one night near an open fire of huge logs lighted in the compound of the house. Late in the evening, the young aspirants had gathered round it with prayerful hearts under the canopy of a starlit winter sky, in a setting of ineffable peace. The meditation lasted long. Then Narendra began to relate the life story of Jesus Christ. He ran through all the anecdotes. Then his brother disciples were introduced to the apostolic world, and in an inspired voice, he exhorted them to be apostles themselves, to carry abroad the new message of the spiritual uplift and salvation of mankind, till they rose up in a body with the blazing fire in front of them and shining stars above as their witness, to pledge themselves to the life of renunciation. The very air was filled with spiritual vibrations, and strangely enough, they recollected at the end of it all that it was the eve of Christ's nativity. This was the first Duni fire that they had, and they took vows of sannyas, renunciation. Shortly after this stirring event, Sarda came home for good and came to live at the Baranagore, left home for good and live at the Baranagore Mat, to the heartbreak, one can be sure, of his parents. In the third week of January 1887, the scripturally prescribed ritual for initiation into sannyas, which had been obtained by Kali, Swami Abhedananda, from a sannyasin of the Puri sect of Shankaracharya, whom he had met at the foot of Barabar Hill, 8 miles from Gaya, was performed at the Mat. 10 of Sri Ramakrishna's disciples who were present took the formal vows and thus became sannyasins. They were given monastic names by Narendra, and henceforth Sarda Prasanna Mitra was Swami Trigunatitananda. Years later, Swamiji deplored the length of the name he had given to Sarda. By the by, he wrote to him, "Can't you shorten your name a bit, my boy? What a long, long name. A single name to fill a whole volume. Won't it look nice if you simplify it a little? But it is too late, I am afraid, as it has always been abroad. But believe me, it is a world-entrancing, death-defying name that you got." It was perhaps too late for India. Nevertheless, to please his beloved brother, Swami Trigunatitananda henceforth referred to himself as Trigunatita. In the West, he would always be known as Swami Trigunatita. And in this book, we shall henceforth refer to him by that name. Okay. The following month, Shivaratri was performed at the Mat with a night-long worship. Swami Trigunatita was present, and in the early morning after the last puja had been performed, the young monks assembled in the big hall. There is a description of Swamiji in the Gospel which depicts him after the night worship, a sight that surely Swami Trigunatita, along with the others, will never forget. Narendra was clad in a new ochre cloth. The bright orange color of his apparel blended with the celestial luster of his face and body, every pore of which radiated a divine light. His countenance was filled with fiery brilliance, and yet touched with the tenderness of love. He appeared to all as a bubble that had risen up on the ocean of absolute existence and bliss, and assumed a human body to help in the propagation of the Master's message. All eyes were fixed on him. For his part, how proud was Swamiji of these brother disciples of his. He spoke of their spirit of renunciation to M as recounted in the Gospel. M. Gopal, Nityananda, is in an exalted state, isn't he? Narendra, what do you mean? M. So much emotion, so much weeping, and such exaltation in the name of God. Narendra, does mere emotion make a man spiritually great? Youngsters like Kali, Sarat, Shashi, and Sarada are more spiritual than Gopal. How great their renunciation is. And we will stop there because it'll be 2 months later when we next read it. Any questions about, this is pretty much just the story of his life. Do you have any comments or questions? Okay. Saturday evening at 5 is Swami Sarvadevananda's Bhagavad Gita class. So be here at 5, in person or on Zoom. And Sunday at 11, Swami is speaking, Swami Sarvadevananda, The Web We Weave. I think that's a wonderful title, because we all weave our own webs, don't we? Okay, no questions? Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.